These are the beautiful country lanes of Wiltshire. Quiet, peaceful. You'd never guess that 80 years ago, this was the site of an invasion of Britain, but not by an enemy force, by Britain's ally, the Americans. On the 26th of January 1942, as war raged across the world, the first of millions of US soldiers started arriving on British shores. Amongst them, perhaps the most famous military unit of World War II, the men that would become known as the Band of Brothers. Now a group of volunteers is digging beneath an idyllic English village to discover the traces those men left behind. In this two-part series, we'll follow their search.
Was an M-Rand rifle clip.
Oh my goodness!
Just found another one.
Look at that!
What they find will reveal remarkable personal stories. That's interesting. So what do you think that's doing in a hut full of men? And connect us to one man with a truly extraordinary tale. (1942), after the outrage of Pearl Harbor and Hitler's declaration of war against the USA, America joined the Allies, which meant Britain was about to get a shock. The streets of towns and villages across the country were filled with the stomp of marching feet, the skies above with the roar of aircraft, the fields and plains with the rumble of tanks and armour. The Americans were here. Britain wasn't just a staging post. The US forces came here to finish off their military training and prepare for the invasion of France. That meant creating new facilities where the GIs could live, train and relax. Over 2 million American servicemen passed through Britain during the Second World War, the so-called friendly invasion. Their contribution to victory was absolutely essential. But they also had a huge impact on the communities on which they were billeted. This is the beautiful, quiet little village of Aldbourne in Wiltshire, typical of the kinds of places where Americans would be sent, from Cornwall right up to Scotland. It was near an airfield and there's useful terrain nearby on which training could take place. This village has a particular association with the 101st Airborne, a division of paratroopers known as the Screaming Eagles, and among them was Easy Company, the famous Band of Brothers. The 101st Airborne was founded in 1918 towards the end of the First World War, but was dissolved the very same month. It was then resurrected in 1921, but as organised reserves. It wasn't until 1942 that the Screaming Eagles were set on their course, when Major General William C. Lee read out General Order No. 5. The 101st Airborne Division has no history, but it has a rendezvous with destiny. The plan was to use infantry carried in aircraft as part of the invasion force that would retake mainland Europe. It was a bold idea. Soldiers jumping out of planes with parachutes attached to their back wasn't an entirely new idea. There had been some limited examples of it before the Second World War. But the first major use of paratroopers came with the German army's Blitzkrieg in Europe in 1940, when they achieved mixed results. The Allies now decided to adopt that way of fighting. But that would require new thinking about training, tactics and equipment. They also need to find a lot of very brave young men. Many of those volunteers ended up in the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. That included Easy Company, whose story is told in the famous series. They were sent to Georgia for their initial training, where they were given the nickname the Currahees after the nearby mountain they had to climb repeatedly. Then, in 1943, they came to Britain to continue their training. Many of them ended up here, in Aldbourne. Now, almost 80 years on, volunteers, including military veterans and archaeologists, have come to see if any traces of those soldiers remain. In charge of the dig is archaeologist Richard Osgood. Richard!
Good to see you, Dan.
Good to see you again, man.
Welcome to Aldbourne.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a place that I associate with the Second World War. It doesn't have that vibe, does it?
I know, I mean, you're standing on a football pitch, but in 1943 and 4, this was a shanty town. It was absolutely crammed with wriggly tin shelters and buildings connected to some of the most famous soldiers of the Second World War, which is, of course, Easy Company.
For the famous history book and then the TV series.
Exactly. So these are band of brothers based in this little village in Wiltshire. The longest time they were together at any one point was here in this village and on this football pitch.
And are we able to know precisely where they would have been within this village?
Well, we're really fortunate because as it's an American base, there are a lot of American air photographs that are taken during the time to look at where they were, and we do have a collection of some of these. You'll notice these ones, there are a series of what they called Quonset huts,
right.
And that's where we think Easy Company was.
So this field would have been what, so almost a parade square in the middle and then huts all around the edge?
It's exactly that.
Wow.
You've got a parade ground, it's a perimeter forming pretty much a quadrangle. You can imagine them doing practice all the way around this field, but this is where they lived. This is where Easy Company spent more time together as a unit than any other place in the whole of the Second World War. So from here, I think there's a lot of forging of that unit.
And so you've got these aerial photos. How then, as an archaeologist, do you decide, right, where we're going to dig? Because it's a big old field. You can't just take the whole topsoil off.
No, that's a good point as well. It's a big field and there's not a single hut as we look at it. So they are no longer here. Luckily, we've got some techniques that we can bring to bear. We've tried geophysical survey on it, looking at a technique called magnetometry, and you look at the magnetic responses below the ground. We wanted to see if that would work, or whether the local story that it had all been bulldozed was correct and there would be nothing left. Well, our geophysical survey came up with some results. Now we've zoomed in a little bit to that end of the field, but you'll notice the huts and the area we thought was Easy Company. And you can see that the colour on here, that's a superimposition of where we got traces of something on the geophysics, and
which corresponds exactly to the aerial photograph.
It's an absolute one-to-one. So we felt fairly confident that the geophysics confirmed there was something where those huts were, but the question is what?
The only way to find out is to dig. They're concentrating in the area identified by the aerial photographs and the geophysical survey. If they're right, this marked out rectangle was the location of one of Easy Company's huts. But this is no ordinary archaeological dig. Many of the volunteers are former military veterans brought together with archaeologists by Operation Nightingale.
So one thing I said to myself when I left the army is I would never dig a hole again.
People we've got on this programme called Operation Nightingale, they're all people that have done it for real themselves, so they can empathise with those men of Easy Company from the 1940s because they've done it in the 21st century. They've suffered those privations of being in huts, of being cold around a stove and then being deployed into operational theatres. So they bring a certain pathos, I think, in some ways, to the whole experience, but they're also very good physically. There he goes. We have. Come here, Dan.
With so many fit and eager hands, progress is quick. And it's not long before the first evidence that they're on the right spot.
Tar paper there, and the first concrete pier. There we are. Richard? Where's Richard gone? Oh, he's way off. He's missing the action.
Wait, ooh.
Base with rebar.
So, and how close was that to where we pegged it for the geophysics?
Pretty much, I think the geophysics was pointing to that.
So he was probably
within
about
an inch or two.
He's about 5 centimetres out.
We'll wind him up.
That's amazing, isn't it? Brilliant. So that is the first sign of the hut.
Yep. And if we take off this, oops, sorry, this one.
Yeah.
Yep, there.
So that ties the building into it, doesn't it?
But we're getting that edge there, and
super.
it feels like the edge is out there.
Well, that gives us a really nice depth to work to.
More tar paper again.
So we'll be really careful with that
solid.
about the waterproofing of the building. So just work to that level and along. So you're happy with that as well, Chris? That's the sort of level we're looking at. So it's a really shallow turf straight onto the building. Nice. See, that's a good solid piece of honest structure, isn't it?
Richard is confident that this is the concrete foundation of what's called a Nissen hut. These huts were a standard design that had been used since the First World War. The invention of engineer Major Peter Nissen. The tar paper they've uncovered was part of a waterproof layer to stop damp coming up through the wooden floor. Such a hut would have had space for around 20 men to sleep and relax in, whilst meals would have been taken elsewhere. These prefabricated structures had most likely been installed here before the Americans had even arrived. Whilst one team is digging for the Easy Company huts, another team are busy investigating a different part of the field.
So Easy Company's over here. They're different phonetic alphabets. So whereas we'd be Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, they are Able, Baker, I can't remember what the rest of it is, but Easy Company, Fox Company and Dog Company. Those are the three letters we're looking at. Now Easy Company, we think, from a sketch map we've seen all over here. There's certainly a photograph of some of the famous characters that are based in the huts over in that direction. But there were huts here. You can see it on the air photographs, and that reckons that it's probably Dog Company and Fox Company. There were huts here that we can see. We can pick them up on the geophysics, and so we're trying a different technique here. We're looking at a metal detecting survey over the top of those areas to see if we can trace huts, features within them, finds within them, and then if there are areas where there isn't any metal reading, which is also important because it's probably the hedgerow or where the tents were. Okay, I know it's very early days, but are you getting any readings?
Yeah, we're getting plenty of readings at the minute.
Good.
So the signals are there. Before I start going in, I just want to discriminate what it is first. But yeah, they're there. It's giving me the depth. Solid tones, so there's definitely signals in there at the minute. So could be big iron, could be trash, but it could be anything. So
okay, well that's really promising. It's just a different tool to use to see what we can find out about the camp, and it's good that we're measuring it all in, and we'll eventually work out precisely what's going on.
Yeah,
it's great. Nice one.
As Richard and the team continue the investigation of Aldbourne football field, I've come to have a look around the beautiful village centre. Many of the buildings around this green were taken over by the officers. It is so remarkable to think about these young men who were drawn from all over America, from the prairies of the Midwest to the shores of the Pacific, arriving in bucolic villages like this, with buildings older than the United States of America itself. Many of them did say it was dreamlike or compared it to arriving on a movie set. And many of them would have found themselves, like me, drawn to the local pub. Setting the scene for an interesting social experiment when the Brits met the Yanks. What's the worst that could happen? Well, authorities judged quite a lot. So they invested in a big education programme, producing, among other things, this rather wonderful film.
And this game won't be won by any single player. It'll be won by a team. A team called the United Nations. A tough little guy from China, Big Joe Russia, John Britain, and a guy called Yank. So let's take a look at the men who carry the ball with us. Let's start with the one that's toughest to understand, the one we know just enough about to confuse us, John Britain.
Here's where he lives. A little island no larger than the state of Idaho. 500,000 people live in Idaho. 96 times that many live in Britain. And in the sardine can called Britain, they learn to get on with their neighbors. They have to. He's too damn close. That's why they have so little crime in Britain. Believe it or not, Even in wartime, the British cop does not carry a gun, nor does the professional crook.
And one of the first things the Americans told their men about British life was, of course, the pub.
Come on. Oh, wait. Before we go in, let me tell you a little about an English pub. It's not like a saloon. It's more like a club for men and women who haven't a great deal of money and who don't drink for the sake of drinking, but for the company. Now, these pubs are open for a couple of hours in the middle of the day and then again in the early evening. And men and women, after their day's work, and they work long and hard hours, come in for a bitter or a mild. Oh, that's beer to you. And incidentally, the beer isn't cold in England, no. They don't like it cold, and they haven't any ice, see? So if you like beer, you better like it warm. What's that? Difference between bitter and mild? I don't know. One's bitter and one's mild. You better find out for yourself. Anyway, these same people have been coming into this same pub for many years, and their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers came in before them. This particular pub, for instance, was founded about the time that our country was founded. So, well, come on, take a look. There you are, you see? That'll give you a general idea.
To back up the film, every serviceman was issued with a little additional reading. This wonderful booklet. The lessons in here have very much stood the test of time. Let's have a look. Introduction. You are going to Great Britain as part of an Allied offensive to meet Hitler and beat him on his own ground. For the time being, you will be Britain's guest. The purpose of this guide is to start getting you acquainted with the British, their country, and their ways. America and Britain are allies. Hitler knows they're both powerful countries, tough and resourceful. He knows that they, with the other United Nations, mean his crushing defeat in the end. So it's only common sense to understand that the first and major duty Hitler has given his propaganda chiefs is to separate Britain and America and spread distrust between them. If he can do that, his chance of winning might return.
But the fellow that calls the signals on the Axis team knows his only chance of winning is to split our team up. So his team plays a game at which they've had a lot of practice, a game called Divide and Conquer.
It is manifestly ridiculous for the warmonger Roosevelt to tell the American people that they have anything in common with the British. On the contrary, they are different in every respect.
The whole book is full of observations and advice to young Americans to getting along in Britain. This is one of my favourite pages. The people, their customs and manners. The first important thing to remember is that the British are like the Americans in many ways, but not in all ways. You'll quickly discover differences that seem confusing and even wrong, like driving on the left of the road and having money based on an impossible accounting system and drinking warm beer. But once you get used to things like that, you'll realise that they belong to England just as baseball and jazz and Coca-Cola belong to us. I'll drink to that.
They have a little number called cricket.
Very well played, sir.
And anyone who ever drank coffee over there knows why there'll always be an England.
Is your coffee all right, sir?
To us, this might feel like a bit of a joke, some very funny observations. But actually, if you take yourself back and put yourself in their shoes, this is a very important little document. If you're a young man, thousands of miles away from home in a strange land, this could be the difference between having a good time and being lamped in a pub. And also, it meant that the war was no longer something that was distant, going on foreign shores. They were now in amongst it, and they could expect to go into battle soon. The men were here to train for war. And back at the football field, they're hoping to find hard evidence of all that military activity.
Do you remember that conversation we had earlier?
Yeah.
About the first find I had in whenever it was, was an M-Rand rifle clip.
Oh my goodness.
Just found another one.
Look at that. If we wanted to find something palpably American in this field, you've just done it on the first morning. Look at that. So that links us to the 101st Airborne in 1943 and 4, this one find.
Yep.
Day one. Brilliant.
It seems nothing at all, but you know, any war aficionado will tell you, you watch any war film and you see an American soldier using an M1 Garand and he gets to his last round and you get that famous ping as the clip comes out the rifle. That's that.
Look at that. That's great, isn't it? Isn't that great?
All we need to do now
is a good feeling.
Just find the 8 rounds to go in it now.
Well done. Well done.
The M1 Garand rifle was one of the most important weapons in World War II, with over 5 million made. General Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. It was used by every branch of the US military, but not the British. So we can be confident this 8-round clip came from an American. In 1943, these hills would have echoed the sound of Garand rifle fire, as the men of Easy Company and other units went through brutal training to prepare them for what was to come. To find out what the training would have been like, I've come to explore one of the wartime practice areas with former Marine Dickie Bennett. Very obvious valley. Is this a good place? Is this a good place to come and practice your weapon skills?
This is a brilliant place because you can see the natural ground. It lends itself to shooting really. You've got all this safety behind you, so you've got the backdrop here which stops any of these stray rounds from hitting anything important.
Yeah, because you don't want to shoot people by accident miles away.
Well, and that's the danger. That's what's so complicated about using ranges today. It's so regimented and laid out because exactly that. You don't want your bullets to ricochet off and hit somebody by accident.
They're firing their weapons here. Are they running up and down a few of these hills for physical fitness? How are they training?
Without a doubt, they'd have been using the landscape. I mean, we're in a really hilly place here, so this would have been good for squad runs, troop runs, all that sort of thing. So they're getting the physical exercise going around. And then when you look at the landscape here, they're not just bimbling around, they're running up to the firing points, they're running to the next one. When they stop firing and it's time to change the weapons, they're running down and changing their butts, putting the patches on to make the targets ready for the next person. And also, you look around the general area, we've got another range complex just at the back over there, and it's more advanced than this one. This is a very basic range for just practicing the low-level tactics of shooting, where to shoot, how to shoot, and then maybe coordinating within your team about giving a fire control. The other range is more about how you'd attack something. So you can use all these different weapon systems, you can bring all this basic knowledge you've learned here, you can then go and advance it on the other range. So it shows how this whole landscape is building the individual ready for that jump, ready into go in France and start fighting the Germans.
And they're also jumping out of planes, presumably doing practice jumps.
And I think they were doing that just over there in the airfield, yeah. So everything around it, they've got everything they need on the doorstep.
The training they're doing right here in this landscape, it set them up so well they performed very well after D-Day.
Well, that's exactly it. It's the little things that make a good soldier. So it's having command and control. It's being able to talk to the person next to you effectively. It's to be able to spot a target and to be able to bring everybody else onto that target quickly. It's about understanding if your oppo's run out of bullets or his magazine's empty. It's about upping your rate of fire to enable him to change his magazine safely and carry on. So it's all these little things that they're learning here, which leads to the success having out there. Without these personal skills and drills, you're not effective.
So you're a former Marine. So do you find that you're bringing quite a lot when you're talking about this archaeology with the experts? You're able to say, hang on, they would never have done this, they would have done that. Must be bringing your own experience to it.
Yeah. Being in the military gives me a different perspective of what the guys have got. So they're professional archaeologists. They understand all the foundations. My job is the tactics and the weapon training. So I can look at the landscape and say, you know what, that would be a brilliant place to put a machine gun. That would be a brilliant place to fire your bazookas from. This is a great area to put your target. It's understanding the landscape and knowing how to utilise it best for what you've got, really.
And you also find that there's a therapeutic effect to doing all this work. Why, if you've been made unwell because of bombs and guns and war, why immerse yourself in it as a form of therapy?
So that's really interesting, that. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? The reason why our participants get the benefit from this is because they understand it. They can take that knowledge of being in the military and make it useful again. and they can understand where the bombs are, where these other bits and bobs are, and they can read the landscape, so they feel like they're contributing again. And also it's a social aspect of being on a dig, and there's all these different factors what really play into it. And the bottom line is, it just makes them feel useful, and I think that's what's key here.
The training the GIs went through here was gruelling, but it was nothing compared to what was to come, as the men of Easy Company would fight in some of the most pivotal battles of the Second World War. In the next episode, we'll discover more about Easy Company's date with destiny. So this could be a D-Day veteran that was just tossed out.
It's D-Day.
Wow. And the team finds something that links us directly to one of the band of brothers. AK the dog tag.
It's a dog tag.
What are you talking about?
What have we got?
For almost a week, the Project Nightingale team of archaeologists and military veterans has been digging in a football field in Aldbourne, Wiltshire. They've uncovered the outline of a hut. This was the location of Easy Company, the band of brothers, made famous by the book and TV series. It's their story we've come to rediscover. Showing me round is the lead archaeologist, Richard Osgood. As you can see some footings there, can't you?
Yep, these are the original post pads on which the Quonset hut were found, and the veterans on our programme have excavated this by hand over the last week.
It would have been wooden floors, you think?
A wooden floor, and it would have been pretty much at the level of just above those concrete pads.
Right, okay.
So that's what you're looking at, with an arched frame that would have met another one that's no longer here. So a big rectangle with a curved roof of corrugated iron.
And this would have been what, for sort of recreation, warming up a bit?
You've got a parade square, as they called it here, but this is where they are living. This is their home from home. Some around the village green and some here. And we think this is Easy Company based on veterans' reports.
Based on this sketch map drawn by an eyewitness, Richard's been able to work out the layout of the camp. The sergeants were based in a hut on this corner of the field, whilst the enlisted privates lived in the huts here, including the one now being excavated. The junior officers, including Dick Winters, were mainly billeted in the village, taking rooms in many of the houses here. And the commanding officers were based in Littlecote House, a Tudor mansion about 4 miles away. But it's the enlisted men of Easy Company that we're interested in. Did they drop anything? That's the question. Did they leave anything behind?
Do you know what? The Brits that were here before were very good, kept it very clean. We have had bits of Americana, finds that are definitely left by an American soldier. It does make you wonder, because you've got items like that.
Yep. Oh, it's like piece of grenade?
It is indeed. Top of an American grenade.
Wow.
It's entirely safe, but it is palpably a piece of American ordnance.
Little spring there. That's great, isn't it?
So you can just imagine your GIs with these things, a crucial piece of kit for when you're in action.
Yeah, wonderful.
And then another item, and whenever we find these things, it always makes me think, why do people ever do prehistory? Because it's much more difficult. This thing, we can tell you that's a Garand round, and it was made in Denver, Colorado in 1942.
So basically a rifle, well, the bullet goes in the end, that's a rifle round.
Yep. It's not been fired.
So it's 42 there, doesn't it?
And
So Denver,
Colorado. It's that simple.
I think I could be an archaeologist.
I think you should.
Wow.
So it's a nice American piece of equipment.
And there's no strike mark there.
No strike
it hasn't been fired.
It hasn't been fired, but there's no propellant, no bullet in it, so it's a safe item. But
so we can imagine the men of Easy Company here. It must be great for your veterans digging this, because there's a kinship across the decades, isn't
That's right. I mean, they view themselves in some ways as being brothers and sisters of the band of brothers, because there's that link over time. They understand what these people went through because they've done it themselves. And I, as an archaeologist, the best will in the world, I'm never going to get that.
The 101st Airborne arrived in England on the 15th of September 1943. But plans for the liberation of Europe, Operation Overlord, as it would become known, had only just been settled that May at the Trident Conference held in Washington. At that conference, it was decided that the Allied assault would be on the coastline of France. So when the time came, following their training, the 101st were transferred from Aldbourne to an airbase in Devon, ready for their flight to Normandy. So what happened to this site after the war? When did all the houses pop up?
Well, actually they made use of the army camp to start with because they're decent structures, and they used after the war for people that became known as squatters. So your houses have been bombed out in the cities and towns you live in, and it provides an immediate solution to that problem before you're given council housing.
Wow.
So these people are living in those until, you know, the early 50s, and in 1953 the hut camp is demolished and they all go, apart from one.
Oh yeah?
And I've got a nice surprise for you, because round the corner here is the last surviving
Oh my goodness.
hut camp of Aldbourne camp.
That's classic, isn't it?
Isn't it beautiful?
That sort of Nissen shape with the corrugated, that's amazing. Wow.
So this is in fact the Red Cross structure. In fact, we think of it as, you know, Red Cross being medical, but they had their food in these buildings.
Okay.
And they do talk about it. The guys in Easy Company talk about having their food in the buildings on the camp.
So they'd pack in here, they'd eat, socialise.
Everything happens in. You know, how you talk when you're having your food and having something to drink. This is where you make your bonds of friendship and discuss things. Usually have a moan about the officers. You do that in your own hut as well as a unit, but they're all have mixed here. I think, you know, Easy Company, Fox Company, all in here. Bit of banter and rivalry between them. And yes, this building is where a lot of those stories were forged.
I love it. It's like such an immediately recognisable shape. Showing its age a little bit, isn't it?
It's tired, but at least it's got a use. So it's taken from that camp and it's now used as a workshop, and it's a functional building, and it's much loved by its users.
Yeah. The camp at Aldbourne was actually quite small in comparison to some of the other GI training camps. Some were built to house thousands of servicemen and featured all the comforts of home, including a barber's and sports fields. Traces of these sites can be found all over the south coast, but it's here in Aldbourne that the most famous unit of all, Easy Company, were based. Back at the dig site, it's time for me to lend a hand. Hey Giselle, how's it going?
It's going well. So we've basically been taking down lots and lots of layers of dirt. We've been exposing all of these post pads all around, so we have the general structure of the Nissen hut. And now we're going to be going and looking through the inside of the hut, and we're looking with metal detectors, trying to get little pings and noises to see if we have anything left in the inside.
Okay, are you going to let me do a little bit of trail work?
A little bit.
I'm not very reliable, but I think... Should we try this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
oh, yeah,
so this
sounds
is
good.
Definitely coming up with something. So if you want to dig right,
okay,
maybe a bit more to the left.
Okay. Here's something. There is something metal right here.
You can tell because it also gets this bit of an orangey look to it if there's something metallic.
Oh, hang on, we got more metal here.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's loose. Wow. So actually what that looks like to me is a bit of corrugated metal.
Oh, okay, potentially from the roof.
Yeah, on the sides of it as the corrugation would go the whole way.
Ah.
Well, most of the way.
I'm very excited by that.
Good.
I was hoping for perhaps a little, you know, something connecting me directly with Dick Winters, but I'll take that. He may have slept under there.
He may have.
What else have you been finding here?
We've been finding a bunch of different things, really. This whole inside area has been giving us a better look at what the people were like who lived here. So we had, not only were the people during World War II living here, the soldiers, but we also had squatters afterwards who moved in from the area. And so we have some finds from that. So we've got, earlier in one of these metal detector hits, we found this little lead pig.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is most likely from one of the squatters who came in after the soldiers had left.
Like a kid's toy, maybe?
Just a little kid's toy, something like that. And we also found this ATS lapel pin.
Hang on a second. ATS, Auxiliary Territorial Service, that was the branch of the army, effectively, that the women could join.
Yes, they're the female branch of the military, of the army, of the British Army.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what do you think that's doing in a hut full of men?
Well, these ladies were the ones who provided kind of the comfort, the food and the biscuits and teas and things like that. And there was a Red Cross hut just over there. So they probably were coming by for that, maybe lost one, but who knows really how that happened.
get to that later. Let's go inside.
Unsurprisingly, this massive surge of young, highly paid, fit young men into Britain revolutionised the dating scene. Young women hooked up with Americans. In fact, Lieutenant Spears, who would go on to achieve fame in the epic retelling of the Easy Company story, got married in this church to a local lady. In all, it's been estimated that something like 225,000 babies were born to British women fathered by American GIs. It sounds like, unsurprisingly, some of the advice about fraternisation in this book was widely ignored. Of course, the Americans weren't here for romance, but for war. D-Day was approaching, when the men of the 101st Airborne would face one of the most difficult tasks of the initial operation. A night jump behind enemy lines 5 hours before the coastal landings. The 101st had a number of objectives, but their main job was to secure the 4 causeway exits behind Utah Beach, between Saint-Martin-de-Varville and Poupeville, to ensure the exit route for the 4th Infantry Division from the beach later that morning. Doing so would help ensure troops who had landed on the beach could move up inland, thus securing their foothold. Failure to do so would have drastic consequences for the Allies' hopes of securing a beachhead, and ultimately the liberation of Europe. Which is why the training that was going on in the football field was so crucial. It's very hard to imagine the tension that would have been felt by the men at camps like this across the UK in the weeks and days leading up to D-Day. They'd have checked and rechecked their kit, they'd have practiced their weapons drills, they'd talked through their plans. Their officers would have tried to keep morale going. The Commander-in-Chief, General Eisenhower, knew the importance of communicating with the men. He visited the 101st Airborne with a very simple message. Full victory, nothing else. With the dig nearing its conclusion, I caught up with Richard to find out if they discovered anything new. So, day 6, what are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at the foundation levels of the huts that we think are used by Fox Company, opposite to their counterparts in Easy Company.
Okay.
And they're quite a different construction style. And we found this as a result of the metal detecting survey we've done to corroborate the results of the geophysics and the radar. And the reason being the
bit of reinforcement.
That's right, the reinforcement bar within the brickwork. So we've enabled our team to open it up, to evaluate it, and just to see if we can match these results to the rest of the buildings, and so we can come up with a strategy.
So we think the huts here would have been facing across a mirror image?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, both companies would have been able to stare at each other through the glass in the mornings.
You can imagine, can't you? So that's good. What else have we got? Lots of finds here, all bagged up.
Yeah, that's right. They're in bags, so we know where they are. We can then do proper GPS locations for them, and then match it to it when we come to excavate it. Now,
and it's all metal detecting work here?
It's all metal detecting to start with, and we'll make archaeology after that. The crucial thing is we've already made some great finds in this particular area, and I think I've got a selection here, and these are probably some of the most interesting, and they're quite variable. Now we'll start with a question. What do you think that is?
I would say that is some kind of clothing buckle.
That's a good start. However, it's a reed for a mouth organ.
Right.
So it's,
nowhere near.
But you know, soldiers have a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
And you can see them sitting in the huts, maybe playing a bit of, you know, blues or something like that. I think it's quite a nice
really
human touch. But there's a lot of martial stuff as well. You've got things like that, which is it's a webbing buckle.
Yeah.
It's all part of the accoutrements that hold the grenades, hold the ammunition, and part of those key things that enable you to carry weaponry into battle.
Lovely, and you must be thrilled to find so many US related objects.
It's the key thing for us was to be able to find palpable Americana, so that we can refer to the team that the reason we're here is looking for Easy Company or Fox Company, the 506, and we're getting little things. Now, we were pleased with that because that's American, but this, I love this.
Wow, so is that a transport token? That looks like a, you use it on the New York subway or something.
Yeah, well, you're close.
Good for one fare.
Good for one fare, and the wonders of the internet shows that the Howard bus line, they're from Atlanta, Georgia.
Someone's got his bus token from Georgia.
And you think where the jump school was, Toccoa in Georgia.
Okay.
So maybe that's a weekend pass, a day pass, and they've been able to get out and visit, explore Atlanta.
I love that.
And just come back with it.
You tried to spend it here to get into Salisbury and they've said no.
Good luck with that. I mean, that much money. Yeah, incredible. So that's another real American link. And then we come on to the things that I think are starting to get you right to the soldiers.
Here we go.
Look at that.
That's a beautiful.
And that's the thing of beauty, isn't it? Never mind the links to the Americans. It's a really beautiful object.
Oh, so that's a button on a tunic?
It's from this position on the uniform.
Wow.
Palpably American. It's got that coat
The
of arms.
American eagle, yeah.
Any speech that any president makes has got that behind them.
Wow. And there you go. Pluribus unum, out of many one, the classic American motto. It's beautiful.
So it takes you back to those soldiers perfectly, doesn't it? Now,
out of many soldiers, one unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if I was to say D-Day, American kit that isn't weaponry related, there's one thing I think that everybody thinks about, and it's prompted probably by the film The Longest Day, but everyone recognises this when it's shown to them.
Aha. This is just that little clicky thing that gives a sound that you know if it's their friend or foe.
It's exactly that. It's a cricket.
A cricket.
So you have one click, which is meant to be replied with to show that you've been recognised.
Brilliant.
And that's D-Day. That's issued to the guys for D-Day, and I believe it's only ever used on that particular engagement. They come back to Aldbourne after D-Day before Operation Market Garden, but they're not used in Market Garden. So these are.
So this could be D-Day veteran that was just tossed out.
It's D-Day.
Wow.
The clicker is an iconic object from D-Day. The team thought they were unlikely to top that, but they were wrong.
What have we got? Is that? No way. Hollywood. Let's see the name on that.
Richard Blake.
Can we see it?
There you go, mate. There's a middle one, there's Reggie number on there as well.
Yeah.
Chargeable
No
fence.
way.
What are you talking about? That's amazing. Richard A. Blake.
Yep.
There's his number.
And you see the next thing, it says T.
Yeah.
43 or 40. Yeah, 43, 44. Yeah. So he's had his tetanus. Goes to 43, 44. Next letter, A.
A.
So that's his blood group.
Okay, blood group A.
And then you see C. He's a Catholic.
No way.
So he is from New York State.
We know a lot about him then, don't we?
He was a 20-year-old.
So you managed to track him down?
You know, the research capabilities of the internet, we've got so much material on him. He was 20 years old when he presumably lost this. He jumps in on D-Day.
Wow.
He comes back. He then jumps again on Operation Market Garden, the Arnhem campaign,
yeah.
and he loses part of his finger, his middle finger, which renders him medically discharged. So he survives the war.
That is amazing. What an amazing thing to have.
You are linked to a paratrooper from the 506.
That's great.
And he survives the war. He died about 10 years ago. But that's a direct link to a paratrooper that was in these fields. We have a picture of him.
Look at that.
So there he is, 506 Parachute Infantry Regiments, Able Company.
And would he have worn this tag around his neck?
He's meant to have two
to
identify him. So one for the neck, and then one will eventually go around the boot for the feet.
So he could be in this shot. He could well be wearing this.
He might be wearing it. Yeah,
he
might well be wearing it. I think losing it would be an embarrassing conversation with the RSM, wouldn't it? The sergeant major to tell them that you've lost this. It's a key part of your kit.
Richard, that is fantastic news.
You know, you're holding a piece of D-Day again. You've got the clicker, but now you're with a person, an identifiable person.
So they'd found an item that belonged to an identifiable D-Day veteran from Able Company. The only thing that could top that would be something belonging to a member of Easy Company itself. But that would be too much to hope for, wouldn't it?
What?
Oh wow, what's her name?
Carl Fenstermaker.
Carl Fenstermaker, yeah.
What? That's it?
Should be in there somewhere.
Oh my God, so where was that from?
You're kidding, what, another dog tag?
And this
Ooh.
is to an Easy Company man.
No, the famous Easy Company, one of the band of brothers. So he's Carl, that's an interesting name. Carl Fenstermacher.
Now that sounds German, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So he's actually Pennsylvania Deutsch.
Okay, so a recently arrived German immigrant families, Pennsylvania.
Yep. Yeah. And again, service number?
Service number, tetanus, O group.
Blood group O, and underneath,
O, Protestant.
not surprisingly, perhaps.
German, yeah, German Deutsch. And why is it bent? Do you think that's deliberately? Do you chuck it away?
We've been discussing this and chatting it through, and I wonder whether, because you see the tetanus is 4243,
okay,
so maybe he's issued another one to be in date for tetanus, and also his middle initial is incorrect. So there's a small mistake. So maybe, just maybe, he was issued another one.
That is beyond my wildest expectations.
You know, you wanted to find easy company.
Congratulations.
It's been an absolute thrill.
Mission accomplished.
It was a fantastic conclusion to the week here at Aldbourne. But that wasn't quite the end of the story. A few days later, I caught up with Giselle online to see what she'd discovered about the owner of the dog tag. Giselle, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Tell me about what you found about, how do we pronounce his name? Fenstermacher?
I believe it's Fenstermacher. He is a Pennsylvanian Dutch, so he's going to have a bit of influence from Europe. So his full name was Carl Luther Fenstermacher, but he kind of went by Dutchy or Dutch as well. And he and two of his best friends all signed up for paratroopers together. And then they took the train ride south to Georgia, where they ended up in Easy Company.
So he is one of the famous band of brothers.
He is. And not only is he just a regular paratrooper, but he also ended up being a pathfinder as well, which is one of the people who go ahead of all the paratroopers, placing these special eureka signals down, which would help the planes of the paratroopers in and guide them to where they needed to then jump.
So that's, I mean, the bravest of the brave. That's incredibly dangerous work.
Yeah, it was basically a suicide mission every time.
And tell me, did he jump on D-Day with the rest of Easy Company?
He didn't do it with the rest of Easy Company, but he was part of that Pathfinder group. So a couple of them, actually him and just one other guy, they were the jumpers at D-Day representing, I suppose, Easy Company. But their plane actually went down over the channel and they were rescued from the water. And thanks to Karl Fenstermacher speaking in German, the HMS Torder that found them ended up thinking that they were maybe German and held them hostage until their identities could be proven.
Oh, I guess he assumed he was being picked up by a German ship, so he's like, "Hey, don't shoot me. I can, well, yeah, don't shoot."
Exactly.
And then how about the rest of the campaign? Was he reunited with Easy Company eventually?
He was. So after he did the jump in D-Day, he went back to England. He was probably in Wiltshire then. He did a bunch of training at different Pathfinder schools as well, because they would have to do trainings before they ended up doing their jumps. But he did end up back in Aldbourne. And then he jumped again for Market Garden, which was in the middle of September 17th, 1944. And he was one of the very successful team members for that. In general, the whole Operation Market Garden isn't really looked on as a very successful mission, but for the Pathfinders, it was extremely successful, and they all made their marks. They were able to get on the ground and get resupplying gliders in. After that, he ended up at Battle of the Bulge, which was in end of December 23rd in 44, and they had Pathfinders who were the key people for Battle of the Bulge. There was a resupply that was necessary to make sure that the troops that were on the ground were going to be able to survive. There was hardly any supplies in the area. These Pathfinders came in, only 20 of them. He was one of 20 people to drop down, put these Eureka signals out, and were able to get the planes to deliver these items that were necessary for survival for all of the people on the ground.
So hang on, Giselle. He jumped into an encircled unit in the Battle of Bulge. He jumped into a cauldron, what people thought might at that point be a hopeless last stand.
Yes, and he was one of only 20 men to do it.
Wow. His wartime service is insane. What happened after the Bulge? Did he jump across the Rhine as well?
No, that was where he sort of ended. As far as we know so far, that's pretty much his jumping repertoire. But he did join up with the troops of Easy Company and other 101st Airborne, and he ended up helping relieve 2 different concentration camps, including Dachau, which we have a very detailed story about how he helped relieve them. And basically, it's because he was able to speak German, and so he was able to ask what's going on, and find out from all the people who were left behind in these concentration camps what was going on. They weren't going to be nice scenes. They were quite gruesome scenes. And what's been written about it, that's going to leave a really rough mark on someone on top of all of the other wartime things that happened.
So he had an extraordinary war, and you have found his dog tag. I mean, this must be, there can be, well, you couldn't have hoped for a better find to make.
It's incredible. The veterans who were working on this dig together, they find connections with the past, and especially if they can find a connection with someone so important in the war, someone of easy company, someone recognizable, this is incredible to them. And for someone to find a dog tag adds a whole nother level of history, and it makes, these veterans are so proud of this find, so incredibly proud of it.
And we managed to track down someone else who we thought would be excited about the find. Carl's grandson, Andrew, who we chatted to from his home in the US.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. Hey, Andrew, great to meet you, man. We are very, very excited to meet you, and I hope that you are going to be excited about some of the news we're going to share. But let's start with Giselle, who's the archaeologist. She's the legend who has been working on this dig. Giselle, take it away. Can you tell Andrew some stuff about what you've been up to?
We've got this project called Operation Nightingale that works with veterans from all over the world, and we do digs that help promote mental health and well-being through the use of archaeology. So we were just doing a dig in Aldbourne, Wiltshire, which is where your grandfather was, and he was there with Easy Company, and so we ended up recovering some finds. We found some foundations of the huts that they were staying in. So it was a really incredible story that we were able to tell, and these veterans helped us do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. We know very little, really. He wasn't one to talk much about it and tell many stories, so I hope you guys aren't depending on me for much as far as that goes. But I was really excited to hear about, what you found and, maybe what kind of stories you've uncovered.
Absolutely. Yeah, we found a surprising amount on him. So, yeah, this will be good. This will be great.
Even if he didn't tell that many stories, could you just quickly, what was he like? Did you know him well? Were you close to him?
No, he died before I was born, actually the year I was born. So yeah, I don't know much. I talked to my dad a little bit, and really looking for any stories that pertain to his time in the 101st Airborne. And we don't know a whole lot. He didn't, we've uncovered just a little bit since then. I told Giselle I did a school project, but that was in like 7th grade, I think. So I was able to find some of that stuff and breeze over it a little bit. But we know that his plane was shot down on the way to D-Day. He never made it by plane, but he was actually transported then to the infantry. So he did make it, but wound up with the infantry instead of by plane in the airborne.
Yeah, we actually, that's exactly right. That's what we've got. So he did jump, sort of. The plane started to go down at D-Day, and he ended up jumping into the channel, and he was recovered by the HMS Tartar, which is a boat out there, but he yelled out in German for safety reasons, and they ended up holding him and his crew hostage until they could confirm their identities. So, which is quite an interesting story. I've actually got a picture of him just before D-Day with some of his mates. So he's the one in the middle smoking the pipe. So we only know 2 of the guys there, but it's
That's incredible.
Really cool. I mean, this guy, your grandfather, was, despite not talking about it much, he was an incredible guy.
Yeah, you guys have really inspired me to dive back in and learn more about his story.
And we have a very special personal connection that we found to this remarkable man. We were all incredibly excited. I have to tell you, we found his dog tag with his name on it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's incredible.
So also with this, Andrew, you can see that it says Carl F. Fenstermacher, which that's not actually his middle initial. He was Carl L. Fenstermacher. So, and then also underneath below that, you can see his service number, which is 130999212. And then there's 2 T's, and that's not normal. Normally there'd only be 1 T, there'd be a space, and then a T, and that stands for tetanus, and then it has the time that he got the tetanus. And then down in the bottom corner is the religion. Oh, and right next to where the tetanus date is would be is the O, which is for his blood type. So this actually gives a lot of information, but the fact that it's a bit, the information's skewed, it's got the wrong middle initial and it's kind of misprinted and it's folded in half, means that it might actually have just been something he got a bit frustrated about, since it wasn't really his dog tag, it was something misprinted, and he folded it in half and just tucked it to the side. And then here comes us years later, and a veteran or one of our team is metal detecting and ends up finding it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This is something that, you know, he may have wore around his neck. He may have thrown away. He may have handled that. Is that a pretty cool connection with your grandpa?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm excited to definitely share with my dad and my aunt and uncles. All of his kids are still alive, and I know that several of them have taken a lot of interest in this, and they'll be very excited to find this out.
Carl was just one of the hundreds of volunteers who came to Aldbourne for training before their date with destiny. Late on the night of the 5th of June into the early hours of the 6th of June 1944, thousands of aircraft engines roared, and Richard, Carl, the men of Easy Company that camped here, thousands of their comrades, boarded Dakota C-47 transport planes for the journey across the Channel into the skies above German-occupied France. The liberation of Western Europe was about to begin. Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.